Hi everyone, this is the next video in the BTEC series, and for this practical we're going to be doing plant chromatography. Quite similar to the amino acid chromatography, but instead this time we're going to actually use leaves to actually extract the colour pigments out of the leaf itself. So first of all, we're going to go through the equipment list just so you know that you've got everything, and if you need anything else, feel free to ask your tutor. So first thing we got is leaves. Winter pansy leaves, 9 of those in a beaker. Next thing we've got is a 1mm syringe, graduated to 1mm. We have a ruler. We have a pencil. We have a pestle and mortar. That's just to crush the leaves up so we can get a nice colour pigment out of it. We have capillary tubes, which again, we're going to split in half so we get a nice consistent dot throughout the paper that we're using, or the plate that we're using. 3 100ml glass beakers, just to store things, to put different solvents in, just to make sure that we've got everything that we need to do the actual chromatography. We have TLC plates. Go through TLC plates a little bit later on, but special type of chromatography paper. We have cling film, just to put over the top when you're actually waiting for the solvent to actually move up the paper. A plastic beaker. We have some propanol, which is what we're going to use to actually extract the colour pigment out of the leaf itself. We have a Bunsen and a heat-proof mat just to the left of the camera there. And we have a chromatography solvent. Now, if you've watched the other video to do with amino acid chromatography, if you've not, have a look at that just to keep you updated with what's going on. This is a different chromatography solvent to the amino acid chromatography solvent. This chromatography solvent is 5 parts cyclohexane, 3 parts propanol and 2 parts petroleum ether. So a special type of chromatography solvent to do this practical. We have a UV light, just to make things easier at the end when we're observing the results. And we have a drying oven at the back that's set to 70 degrees Celsius, which is what we're going to use to actually dry the leaves out. So that's all the equipment. Give you a couple of minutes just to double check that you've got everything to do with that equipment list. And then we'll move on and actually do the practical. Right, so for this experiment, you can use paper chromatography, but we're going to use something which is a TLC. Now, TLCs stand for thin layer chromatography. So TLC plates are different because they are actually coated in a layer of silicon. So on one side, you have the silicon itself. On the other side, you have like a type of powder at the back. Now be very careful when you're using your TLC plate. If you handle it too heavily, you'll actually destroy the back of it and rip some of the corners off. If that happens, we can't use that plate. So be very careful when you're handling it. Handle it the way like I've got it. 1 finger at the bottom, 1 finger at the top, just to make sure that you're not contaminating the paper in any way. So, the difference between TLC plates and paper chromatography, there's a few differences. The difference is that with paper chromatography, you've got both sides that you can use to make sure that you get the right result, and to make sure that you get what you need out of the paper chromatography. The TLC plates, you can only use one side. One side's covered in silicon, so we can't use that side. So you've got to be super careful with the side that's actually got the powder on the back, not to destroy the TLC plate. TLC plates cost a lot more than paper chromatography, but for some practicals like this one, you may get a better result, you may get a nicer colour, you may get a colour that you can see and differentiate better on a TLC than what you do on the paper. So it's all down to what you're testing for. You may want to compare and contrast paper with TLC for this practical. For this video, I'm just going to go through the TLC side of it, just so you can understand what TLC should look like. Right, so to get started with the practical, what we're going to do is we're going to get the leaves that we've collected or been given for you, and we're going to get a pestle and mortar, like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to need some propanone or acetone for this one. Propanone and acetone are the same chemical. It's useful to note that it's flammable and it's harmful. So make sure that when you're using it that you take care. Decant it into a smaller beaker or use the actual drop-in bottle that you've been provided with, because we're only going to need a small amount of this. So, put your leaves into the pestle and mortar. Now with your 1 centimetre cube pipette, take up or draw up to where it says 0.1. Like so. And we're going to put that straight into where the leaves are. Now, this is where you need a little bit of manual labour. And we're going to crush the leaves up. And you want to do it in a circular motion. And what you're looking for is you want to try and get so all the leaves are in the middle and all mushed up, because that's the bit that we're going to need to use next. So check back in 5 minutes once I've crushed the leaves up, and we'll move on to the next part. But just remember, circular motions, make sure that you crush it all up and make sure you get as much of the leaf crushed up as possible. And we'll check back in 5 minutes. Right, so after 5 minutes, once you've crushed it all up, you should see your plants crushed nicely in the middle like so. Now, a top tip, take a picture before you actually take this out of the pestle and mortar. There may be some points here that you can say that you've lost a little bit of colour pigment. There's nothing we can do about that, but what you can do is you can actually comment on it in your method itself, just so that you can say, this is where I've lost a little bit of it. This is where the results might have not gone the way that you might have thought it had done. So, next thing that we're going to do is, let's set the stand up properly. We're going to transfer this into a 100ml beaker. So using a spatula, just scoop up all of the leaf and put it into the beaker itself. Now there will be quite a bit left of your colour extract. Again, as I said before, take a picture of it just so you can comment on it. And what we're going to do is, if you follow me again, with this, we're going to put it into a drying oven that's set to 70 degrees. Now the reason that we're doing that, because now we've hydrated it, we want to dry it out again to try and extract even more pigment out of it. If you use too much acetone at once, it'll get rid of all the colour. We don't want that. So check back again in 5 minutes when it's all dried out and we'll re-extract it again. In the meantime, we'll get our capillary tubes ready to use for the actual TLC plate itself. Right, for this next bit, we're going to use the capillary tubes to actually make the different tubes, the 2 different tubes that we're going to be using to actually dot the tile. Before we get started with this, we need to make sure that any of the acetone used from the previous step is well out the way. So anything that you think may be flammable, make sure is out of the way. Because the last thing that we want is a massive fire. Remember to always check the risk assessment that you've completed before you've done the practical to make sure that you follow it safely and correctly. So, those are the capillary tubes that we're going to actually split in half and to use while dotting the TLC plate. Again, we've been through this on the amino acid chromatography video, but we'll go through it again just so you can see how to do it. So, what we need to do is make sure that your Bunsen is set to the correct position. So air hole closed, make sure the gas is switched off. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the gas on. And we're going to light the Bunsen. Like so. Now, for this, as we said on the last video, turn your gas down to make it a safer flame. And then turn it to a blue flame. Like so. Now again, if the flame's too small, add a bit more gas to it. But you don't want it too high of it, or you don't want to turn it too low like that, because the actual flame goes out. So, same again. Gas on. Yellow flame. Turn your gas down. And then put it on a blue flame. Like so. Now, with your actual capillary tube itself, we're going to put this, hold it on each end, and you're going to want to go to the middle, and you're going to want to just twist and pull. And what you should get are two different capillary tubes that you can use while dotting it. Now again, these are quite sharp, so just tap them on your heatproof mat to make sure that you get any of the sharp long pieces out, and that should leave you with two capillary tubes that you can use to dot. So while we're waiting for the actual plant to evaporate and to get rid of all the solvent, which shouldn't take too long, we're going to set up our TLC plate. So make sure that you're on the non-shiny side, put it on there. And from about 1 centimetre from the bottom, using a sharp pencil, and without pressing down too hard, draw a line. Like so. Be very careful with that bit, because if you press down too hard, you will actually wreck the powder at the back, and you won't be able to carry out the practical, and you need to use another TLC plate. So, for the next part, what we're going to do is, we're going to wait for the plant's extract to dry up, rehydrate it, and then we're going to spot it onto the tile itself, or the plate itself. Right, so we've just collected the plant extract out of the drying oven. As you can see, very dry, goes a very dark green colour, which is exactly what we wanted. So for the next part of this, we're going to need again some more acetone. And we're going to put 6 drops. Only 6, nothing more, into your plant extract. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what we're going to do with this is, using a glass rod, which I'll go and collect now, we're going to actually crush the leaf back up again. So you want to crush it, don't press down too hard, but you want to try and get as much of the colour out of the leaf as possible. And it should start to break up, which is what we want. We want the leaf to start breaking up. When it's broken up like so, this is where we start to spot the tile. Or spot the plate, I should say. Now, for this, we're going to do the same technique as what we did with the amino acid chromatography. But if you've not watched it, what we're going to do is take your capillary tube, dip it into your leaf itself, get a nice bit of green off it, and then dot it onto your tile or your plate. And you're going to keep doing that until you've got a nice green dot in the middle. Make sure that you do it in the middle, because if you don't do it in the middle, it will actually start to go off the side of the plate, which is not what we want. Give it a push back down. And then just push it onto there like so. Now you should get a nice green dot from that. Like so. So do that a few more times. Make sure that it's as dark as that if you want to get it as dark as that. The more dark you get, the better. And then what we'll do is we'll set up on the next part of the video on how to actually set up the actual chromatography apparatus itself. The next part of the video, what we're going to actually do is we're going to actually carry out the practical. So, using a plastic beaker and using your plant chromatography solvent, what we're going to do is we're going to pour a little bit into a beaker. And then, because of the size of the TLC plates, we don't actually need to support this, because it should naturally just stand up in the beaker, like so. Now using your cling film, put your cling film over the top of the beaker. Like so. Now what you can see is, it will start to rise up the paper. Now this is a lot different to paper chromatography. As you can see, because of the solvent that we're using and because of the actual TLC plate, the solvent is actually moving up the paper or the plate a lot quicker than what it did do with the amino acid chromatography, which isn't right. Well, it is right, but what it also means is that it's going to take a lot shorter to do. While you're waiting 45 to an hour for your amino acid, with this you may only be looking at 10-15 minutes. So again, something to compare the two when you're doing your write-up at the end. And as you can see, it's just gone above the green dot. Now, it doesn't look like that the green dot's going to travel upwards, but it will do. Trust me, the colours will separate out. And you should get a nice separation of colours. So check back in 10-15 minutes. We'll have a look at the results, we'll interpret the results, and then that should be the end of the practical. You can do this with paper chromatography as well. It's completely up to your tutor, just to compare and contrast the two. But for the time being, this is the TLC plate. Give it 10-15 minutes, let it get its results, and then we'll check back on it. Right, so after 10-15 minutes, your plant extract should have separated in different colours. Now, it's important this bit that you work as quickly as you can, If you leave it too long, the colours will start to fade because the plants react with sunlight. That will mean that the colour will eventually fade away depending on how long you take to do it. So what you need to do is getting your pencil and getting your TLC plate itself. You want to start to draw lines where you see colours. So ignore the big line at the bottom. Draw lines where you see colours. If it's difficult to see the colours, best thing to use is a UV torch. Now a UV torch, you can shine through the bottom of it, that will be able to show you the different colours that they appear. There is one difficult colour to see, which is white. So if you shine your UV torch at the bottom, you should be able to work out where colours are. And you should get between 4, 5 or 6 pigments of colour. Once you've done that, what you need to do next is you need to draw your lines on and measure using your ruler the distance between the lines. What we'll do in a second is we'll put a table up with the results from this chromatogram here, and we'll show you what results we've got, so you can dot where you can see the different colours to take measurements for later results. These are the results taken from the chromatogram earlier. Remember to record the results in millimetres, record the solvent front, and use the calculation underneath to work out each of the RF values for each of the colours.